The wind never stopped dancing at Dusty Hollow's rest stop. It wove through the brittle sagebrush, stirred dust along the dirt trail, and clinked against the rusted windmill by the dry creek that hadn't spun in decades. The sky stretched wide, pale and unforgiving, too vast to feel like home. Nothing stirred but the wind and the girl. She sat alone on a splintered bench outside the stagecoach stop, knees pulled up, her small hands clutching a carved wooden bird, its wing chipped and worn. Her bare feet were caked with dust, her dress too large, pooling around her like it belonged to someone else. Maybe it once did. No one asked her name. The driver had helped her down from the coach with a quick, awkward nod and said, "Stay put, kid. Someone's coming." Then he'd climbed back aboard and left Mara sitting there, like a forgotten parcel. She didn't cry. She'd already wept, silent and raw, in the coach's cramped corner, beside a hand that grew cold. No one was left to hear her now. The wooden bird in her grip was all she had, its edges smoothed from her touch. She turned it over, as if it might whisper something back. An hour passed, then another. A wagon rattled by. No one stopped. A few folks glanced her way, half pity, half hoping she wouldn't trail after them. The deputy rode by on a slow mule, eyeing her warily. "Where's your kin, girl?" he asked. Mara didn't look up. "My mama passed this morning." The deputy rubbed his jaw. "Can't stay here forever." "Okay," she said, voice flat. He shifted in his saddle. "Widow Crane might know what to do. I'll swing by after my rounds. Don't wander." He didn't ask her name. Dusk crept closer. The wind softened, but still it sang through the gaps in the stop's wooden walls, tugging at faded notices pinned to the board. The sun dipped low, painting the platform in hues of gold and rust. Then came the steady thud of hooves, unhurried, deliberate. A sturdy bay horse appeared, pulling a weathered wagon. Its rider dismounted with ease, a tall man with broad shoulders and a hat tipped low. He carried a sack of grain under one arm, his coat worn from years of work, not vanity. He didn't see Mara at first. He tethered the horse, checked the harness, and hefted the sack into the wagon. Only then did his eyes catch the girl on the bench. Her gaze met his, not begging, not lost, just hollow. It made Caleb Wren pause, one hand resting on the wagon's edge. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a cloth-wrapped biscuit, still warm. He crossed the dirt and held it out. "It's cornbread," he said, his voice deep, like gravel underfoot, but not unkind. Mara looked up, then took it with careful hands. Caleb didn't wait for words. He returned to his wagon, loaded the last of his supplies, and climbed onto the seat. Mara unwrapped the biscuit, peeling the cloth slowly, as if it might crumble. She took a small bite, chewing thoughtfully, her eyes fixed on the man. As Caleb gathered the reins, Mara stood. "Can I stay with you for a day?" Her voice was steady, no quiver, just a quiet question dropped like a stone into a still pond. Caleb stared at the horizon for a long moment. The wind hummed between them. Then he nodded once. Mara didn't smile. She climbed into the wagon, silent as a shadow, the wooden bird still in her hand. "What's your name?" Caleb asked as they rolled away from Dusty Hollow. "Mara," she said. He tipped his head. "Caleb Wren." They didn't speak again for miles. The land unfurled around them, vast and dry, dotted with scrub and mesquite. The wagon groaned under their weight. Mara watched the junipers pass, their twisted branches like silent watchers. When they reached the ranch, Caleb pushed open a creaking gate and let it swing shut behind them. The place was simple: a barn, a henhouse, a stone well, and a house of weathered cedar, built more with grit than finesse. Mara slid down from the wagon, her feet meeting the earth with a soft thud. A scruffy dog with a white muzzle limped over, sniffed her hand, and settled beside her like an old friend. Inside, the house was spare but tidy. A single chair sat by the fireplace, a rough table held two mismatched stools. No frills, no warmth beyond the walls themselves, holding stories they didn't tell. Caleb set a tin mug of water on the table. Mara looked at it, then sipped, her eyes on the wooden bird she still held. "Where's your pa?" Caleb asked. She shook her head. "Never had one." "Other kin?" Another shake. He didn't press further. That night, Caleb spread a quilt on a bench by the fire. "Sleep here," he said. Mara paused, then slipped off her too-big dress, folding it neatly beside her. The wooden bird went under her pillow. She didn't cry or speak, just lay down and watched the flames dwindle. Upstairs, Caleb sat by his window, listening to the wind's low song and the distant yip of coyotes. But inside there was another sound, soft breaths, small shifts, the house remembering how to hold more than one soul. The next morning, Mara was in the barn before dawn. Know how to tend chickens? Caleb asked. I've seen it done, she said. You don't have to work. I like it, she replied. He didn't argue. That afternoon, they rode into town for salt and cloth. Mara sat beside him, her bird still in hand. At the mercantile, Mrs. Tate raised an eyebrow. Yours, Caleb? Just for the day, he said. She looks weary, Mrs. Tate noted. Been a long road. She watched them leave, her lips pressed tight. Back in the wagon, Mara was quieter still. But as the sun sank over the plains, she looked at Caleb and asked, You ever have kids? He kept his eyes on the reins. No, she nodded. Me neither. They didn't speak again until they reached the ranch. As they stepped down, Caleb looked at her, his face softened by the fading light. You're my daughter now, he said, the words rough but steady, like a vow carved in stone. Mara met his gaze, her fingers tightening around the wooden bird, and gave a small nod. She didn't go to the bench that night. Instead, she sat by the dog, leaning against the hearth, waiting for the fire to catch again. 3 days passed before either of them spoke of Mara still being there. Caleb came down the creaking stairs one morning and found the girl already outside, dragging a bucket of water from the well. A frayed rope was slung over her shoulder, the bucket wobbling in her small hands. The old dog, Rusty, limped behind her, tail wagging like a metronome. The early sun lit the dust in the air, casting the ranch in a soft, dreamlike glow. You keep working like that, Caleb said, stepping onto the porch. Folks might think you're staying. Mara set the bucket down, brushing her brow. Can I stay one more day? It was the same question she asked each morning now. Not forever, not what's next, just one more day. Caleb scratched his chin. One more. They didn't talk of permanence, but it lingered between them, heavy as a storm cloud. Every chore they shared, every moment side by side, wove Mara deeper into the rhythm of the ranch. She didn't seem to notice, but Caleb felt the place shift with her presence. That afternoon, they mended a sagging fence by the north pasture. The wind was gentle, the sun warm, and Caleb handed Mara a small mallet and a strip of cedar, showing her how to drive nails without splitting the wood. Steady, he said. Let the tool do the work. Mara nodded, her focus sharp. Her hands were small but sure, unbothered by splinters or strain. When she finished, she stepped back, chin high. Caleb inspected the fence. Not half bad, he said. Could make a rancher out of you yet. Mara's lips twitched, a smile she quickly hid by tugging at her sleeve, as if the warmth of his words was too much to hold. Later, they walked the perimeter, Rusty trailing behind. Caleb showed her how to spot weak posts and tangled wire. Mara asked questions, sharp, curious ones, not the kind most kids bothered with. Why do the horses always graze that same corner? She asked. Habit, Caleb said. And memory. They know where they're safe. Mara nodded, her eyes distant, like she was piecing together something bigger. That evening, the town started to notice. Mrs. Lorne, the mercantile owner's wife, dropped by with a spare sack of cornmeal. She lingered on the porch, glancing toward the barn where Mara was brushing the old gelding. She yours now, Caleb? She asked, blunt as ever. Just staying, he said. Doesn't look like she's leaving, Mrs. Lorne replied, raising an eyebrow. Caleb paused, then nodded. Don't reckon I am either. She gave a knowing nod and left. But in a town with one saloon, one chapel, and too many eyes, word spread like wildfire. By evening, whispers filled the feed store and the blacksmith's shop, questions hardening into assumptions. 2 days later, the deputy rode up. He didn't bother dismounting, just sat at the gate, reins loose in his hand, his face lined with reluctance. Need a word, he said. Caleb leaned against the porch rail. Say it. The deputy glanced around, like the ranch itself might answer. Heard about the girl. You keeping her here? Caleb crossed his arms. She's fed, safe, working hard. What's your point? The deputy sighed. There's laws, Caleb. You keep a kid with no papers, someone might come sniffing. You ready for that? Caleb's eyes drifted to the house, where Mara was scrubbing plates, humming a tune that seemed to come from nowhere. It was faint, but it was life. She's earned more than papers, he said. The deputy frowned. Courts don't care about earning. They care about claims. Watch yourself. This town don't like trouble it didn't invite. That night, Mara found Caleb by the fire. The flames carved shadows across his weathered face, catching every scar, every unspoken thought. Is someone coming for me? She asked, her voice small but steady. Caleb stared into the hearth. Maybe. You scared? She shook her head. Not if I can stay. He didn't reply. The fire hissed, sparks drifting up the chimney. The wind outside picked up, rattling the shutters. After a long silence, Mara spoke again. Mama used to say people always leave. Caleb turned to her. That so? He paused, then said, I ain't people. Mara nodded, then curled up by the hearth, her wooden bird clutched close. She fell asleep there, and Caleb let her be. The next morning brought a letter from a county clerk in a town 2 valleys over. It was addressed to Caleb Wren. He slid it open, reading each line carefully. Someone claiming to be Mara's kin, an uncle, had filed for temporary custody. An inquiry would start soon. The signature was unfamiliar, but Caleb knew the kind. Men who saw a child as a tool, a pawn, or a burden to discard later. He folded the letter and fed it to the fire. Mara watched from the doorway. Was that about me? Caleb met her eyes. They say you got no one. You believe that? She stepped closer, her shoulders a little straighter than they'd been days ago. I did. Not anymore. Caleb nodded. Then we'll fight it. Together. He rested a hand on her shoulder, firm and sure. You're my daughter now, he said, the words rough but solid, like the earth beneath their feet. Mara's fingers tightened around her wooden bird, and she gave a small, certain nod. The days that followed carried a quiet weight. The letter was gone, but its shadow lingered. Caleb knew more would come. Papers were just the start when someone had a purpose. Mara seemed to sense it too. She stopped asking for one more day. She just acted like she belonged, rising before dawn to feed the hens, collect eggs, and set water to boil before Caleb stirred. Gonna have to start paying you, he said one morning, half joking. Don't need pay, Mara replied, tying her shoes. You gave me a home. That's enough. Caleb didn't answer, just handed her a mug of milk-heavy coffee, and watched her sip it like she'd been doing it for years. Autumn crept closer, the mornings sharp with frost. One day, while chopping wood, Caleb spotted a rider on the hill watching. By the time he grabbed his shotgun and reached the fence, the figure was gone, just a puff of dust in the distance. Mara saw it too. That him? She asked. Might be, Caleb said. Looks like a man who wants something. She nodded. Will he come to the door? Caleb glanced at her, unflinching and steady. No. He'll try the back way. That night, Caleb sat by the fire longer than usual, his old shotgun across the table. Mara was upstairs, turning pages in a book, but mostly watching the firelight flicker on the walls. Rusty growled once, then settled. A knock came sharp once, then twice. Caleb opened the door slowly. The man outside was lean, with slicked hair and a smile that didn't touch his eyes. His coat was too neat, boots too polished, city polish masquerading as frontier grit. Evening, the man said, his voice smooth as oil. Name's Gideon Slate, the man said, his voice slick as a snake oil salesman's. I'm here about my niece. Caleb didn't budge, one hand gripping the doorframe. That's so. Mara's mine, Gideon went on. Her mama was my sister. Passed hard, God rest her. I'm all she's got. Papers are on their way. Figured I'd fetch her now. Caleb's eyes narrowed. Funny how you only show up when she's found a roof. Gideon's lips curled, not quite a smile. Didn't know where she was till now. And you, what's your claim? She's under my roof, Caleb said, stepping closer. That's claim enough. Gideon leaned in, his eyes like flint. Keeping a runaway's against the law. I could have the Pinkertons dig into what kind of man you are. Caleb didn't flinch. Go ahead. I reckon a man like you's got more to hide than me. Gideon straightened, tipping his hat with a mock bow. You're making a mistake, Wren. I'll be back. His boots crunched on the dry earth as he walked away. Mara stood at the top of the stairs, her wooden bird clutched tight, having heard every word. He wants to take me, she said, voice steady but small. He won't, Caleb replied, meeting her gaze. You sure? No. But I'm here. Mara nodded, her fingers tracing the bird's chipped wing. I want to stay. Not just a day. For good. Caleb felt something settle in his chest, solid as stone. Then that's what we'll fight for. The days that followed were heavy with waiting. Caleb rode into Sagebrush Hollow, quietly rallying allies. The preacher's wife, Mrs. Lorne, the farrier who'd seen Mara feeding his mare. They'd all noticed her, truly seen her. They wrote letters, signed affidavits, lent their names in a town where trust was currency. One evening, Caleb brought Mara to meet the judge proper. Sir, she said, her voice clear, I don't want to go with that man. He's no kin to me, not really. The judge, weathered and slow to speak, held her gaze. Kin ain't always blood. We'll see what we can do. A week passed, then another. No word from Gideon Slate. Then, on a crisp Tuesday morning, a black buggy rolled into town, bearing a territorial seal. A man in a starched suit stepped out, a state-appointed child welfare officer. Caleb met him at the edge of the ranch. "I know why you're here," Caleb said. The officer nodded. "And I know you, Wren. Your name carries weight. But so do my papers. We'll do this right." The hearing was held in the town's chapel, doubling as a courthouse. Wooden benches creaked under the weight of honest eyes. Mara sat between Caleb and the judge, small but unyielding. The officer presented Gideon's claim, documents, timelines, blood ties. Caleb countered with his own bundle, letters, witness statements, and a drawing Mara had made of the ranch, paired with a note in her careful script. "This is the first place I've felt safe. Please let me stay." The judge read it slowly, the room silent. Then he looked up. "Caleb Wren, do you mean to raise this girl as your own?" "I already do," Caleb said. He turned to Mara. "And you, child?" Mara stood, her voice steady. "He's not my pa by blood, but he's my home." The gavel fell. Decision pending. But Mara didn't feel pending. She felt chosen. The days after the hearing dragged, the sky growing heavier each morning. Even the hens seemed quieter, as if they sensed the weight. Caleb and Mara spoke little, both holding their breath in their own way. Then, a week later, the judge himself rode up, an envelope in hand. He met Caleb at the gate. "It's done," he said. "You're her guardian now." Slate dropped his claim. Seems someone reminded him of a few debts back east. Caleb didn't ask who. He took the letter, Mara's name now written as Mara Wren. The judge tipped his hat and left. Caleb walked to the porch, where Mara sat with Rusty, tossing him bits of bread. The dog thumped his tail once, then sprawled out. Caleb handed her the letter. Mara read the first lines, then looked up. "This mean I stay?" "Means you already have." Mara didn't smile right away. She let the weight settle, then stood and hugged Caleb, wordless. It was a hug you didn't repay with arms, you repaid it by staying. Life didn't snap back to normal. It grew into something richer. Mara started school twice a week, riding into town with Caleb. She grumbled at sums but loved stories and sketching. The teacher called her quiet, but quick as a whip. At the ranch, she learned to ride properly, balance ledgers, and fix the creaky windmill when it stuck. Caleb let her take the reins more each day. "Keep that up," he said one afternoon, watching her mend a gate with her sleeves rolled high, "and I'll be out of work." "Then I'll hire you," Mara said, flashing a grin. One evening, as the first frost settled, Mara asked, "Why'd you take me in, Caleb?" "Back when I was just some kid at the stop." He was sharpening a knife, his eyes on the blade. "You look like I felt, once. Like you needed someone to stay." Mara nodded, quiet. "Glad you did." "Me too." That winter was sharp, but warm in its own way. They chopped wood together, shared soup by the fire, and played checkers with a board missing half its pieces. It didn't need to be perfect, just theirs. Letters from the territory came every few months, formalities and updates, but they were just echoes of what already was. No one questioned Mara's place, not the townsfolk, not the law, not Mara herself. She belonged. One spring morning, Mara climbed the roof to patch a loose shingle. Caleb yelled up that she was nailing it wrong. "You sure?" she called back. "Unless you want it flying off in the next storm." She fixed it, then sat up there, gazing at the horizon. "Think we'll ever go west?" she asked. "What for?" "To see it." Caleb chuckled. "Maybe. But you're driving." Mara grinned. "Deal." That summer, they built a new hen house, sturdier, bigger. The next year, they bought a second horse, a bay mare Mara chose herself, spirited but loyal to her. They named her Sage. By the time Mara turned 14, no one called her the orphan girl. She was Mara Wren, daughter of Caleb, a rancher. And home wasn't just a place, it was a promise kept. "You're my daughter now," Caleb had said, and every day since proved it true. Thank you for watching the video. Please like and subscribe if you love this video, and share your loved on.